Hey there everyone, welcome to FJX 2000 Productions and another episode of Let's FJ. In today's episode, I finished my explanation of all things regarding FJ Cruiser lifts and suspension. This episode is the final part of a series I am doing all about lifts and suspension, so if you missed parts 1 or 2, be sure to check them out first, as they make the things talked about in this video make more sense. I will put links in the corner of this video, as well as links in the description below to make them easier to find. In this video, however, I will be going into more detail about specific FJ Cruiser lift parts and components, as well as other general lift information to further help viewers understand what types of options are available, or what types of things to look out for while choosing a lift for your own FJ Cruiser. As always, if you haven't subscribed already, I encourage you to do so, as that, along with more likes on my videos, helps keep me motivated to make more FJ related content. You guys have been doing amazing with the goals I set in the last 2 videos of this series. Thank you so much for that, and know that you are all awesome, and I appreciate you supporting my channel. So my goal for this video is to get my channel to 3,500 subscribers. As I record this, I am at 3,300, so we only need 200 more subs to get that goal. And seeing as only 10% of my viewers are subscribed, if you are part of that 90% and enjoy FJ Cruiser videos, please consider subscribing and help reach that goal. Anyways, let's hop into the video. Now that we have covered the basics of FJ Cruiser suspension in part 1 and have talked about the different types of FJ Cruiser lifts in part 2, I want to go over some general FJ lift information and lift component details as to help clarify any questions you may have about the parts offered out there, so you can build up your ideal FJ Cruiser suspension setup without any issues. Generally, in the FJ Cruiser community, folks like to run 3-inch lifts with 285 70 R17 tires, if they have the factory 17-inch wheels, or 285 75 R16 tires, if they have the factory 16-inch wheels. These sizes are essentially 33-inch by 11.5-inch tires, and these, paired with a 3-inch lift, make for the ultimate combo that most FJ Cruiser owners run with no issues and lots of success. You can of course go with larger or smaller tires or more or less lift, as long as you do your research and see what other people have done to get their specific setups to fit, especially if they have aftermarket wheels with different backspacing and offset than the stock wheels. One of the most common places to watch out for is the rear of the front wheel wells, where the body mounts to the frame. When installing larger tires, installing wheel spacers, or running wheels with an offset that sets them out to the sides further, you increase the likelihood of rubbing at this body mount. This is the most common spot people will have rubbing issues, and if it is severe enough, a body mount chop, or BMC, is recommended. This is a common modification where the excess metal that isn't necessary and contacts the wheel at full steering lock is cut away, and a new metal plate is welded in its place to help retain structural strength. This allows for full movement of the tire without rubbing, but for some setups, even this may not be enough. Ultimately, the rule of thumb is you want to keep your tire as close to the upper control arm as possible without rubbing on it, even at full lock. This will hopefully keep you from hitting the body mount, but isn't a guarantee for success. For example, to get 35s to fit on my own FJ Cruiser with my current TRD 17-inch by 7-inch wheels, I have aftermarket tubular upper control arms, 1.25-inch wheel spacers, and I had to do an aggressive body mount chop twice. But even after that, I still had to hammer flat a pinch weld above the body mount, where 2 body panels are fused together. By hammering this weld flat, as well as hammering back the wheel well in general, it helped my tire not have any rubbing issues when turning and flexing upward, though adjusting the caster forward at an alignment shop will also help clear the body mount. Some companies sell a completely new body mount that can be welded onto the frame and allows for the original body mount arm to be removed, thus giving even more room and clearance for those still having clearance issues with 35s, or even trying to squeeze 37s in there. That aftermarket body mount will of course take a bit of cutting, welding, and fabrication work to be done, but it is nice that such an option exists for those interested in such an item. If you saw my last video for my list of where to begin with modding your FJ Cruiser, you will know that I am a strong supporter of sticking with 33s and a 3-inch lift for simplicity and dependability, so check out that video for more details. Another thing FJ Cruiser owners experience from time to time is the notorious driver's side lean. It is thought, due to the fuel tank, battery, and driver all being located on the driver's side of the FJ, that this causes there to be a noticeable lean in some people's rigs, both before and after a lift is installed. Though those with adjustable coilovers can make slight adjustments to their suspension to try and counteract this natural lean of the FJ, there are companies that sell 10mm, 20mm, and even 25mm trim spacers intended to be installed above the rear coil on the drooping side in order to help even things out. There are even some trim spacers intended for above the front coilovers for those without adjustable suspension. One question I've seen asked is if different suspension components from various companies can be pieced together, or do they have to be all from one manufacturer? And the answer is, as long as the parts are compatible, then you can certainly mix and match FJ Cruiser suspension components. For example, my FJ has Icon extended travel coilovers with Total Chaos upper control arms in the front, with Metaltech rear long travel in the back, paired with Res Fab offset rear links and Panhard bar. So as long as no parts conflict, you should be fine to pick and choose which parts you would like to install. When it comes to shock diameter and choosing the right type of shock or coilover for you, especially when deciding between reservoir and non-reservoir suspension, it all boils down to what type of off-roading you plan on doing and what your rig setup is going to be like, as well as what type of suspension control you are desiring to have. Though some shock manufacturers list their diameters in millimeters, I will just talk in inches, since it is much more common here in the US. The two main shock diameters on the FJs are 2-inch and 2.5-inch. And while it doesn't sound like a huge difference, the larger the shock diameter, the more dampening power and control it has to offer. With a larger piston that utilizes more internal fluids or gases, the larger 2.5-inch shocks and coilovers on the market are better suited for FJs that will see more strenuous off-roading and may be a bit heavier due to aftermarket components such as bumpers and other equipment. An external reservoir is something added to some shocks, usually 2.5-inch ones, that allow for the shock or coilover to have even more internal fluids or gases, and it helps with heat dissipation that is essential for situations where the suspension is really being worked, and the shock's internals begin to heat up from the stress. If you plan to Baja-style off-road your rig, external reservoirs are for you. But for someone who may only be doing slow-speed rock crawling, there really is no benefit to having reservoirs. That is, unless you want to be able to control the level of dampening within your shock. Some manufacturers offer shocks that have external reservoirs with adjustment knobs on them, which allow for the dampening to be increased or decreased to the driver's preference. Companies with such shocks include Elka, Icon, ADS Racing Shocks, and even Old Man Emu with their newer BP51 series suspension. I actually have 2.5-inch external reservoir rear long travel shocks on my own FJ, and they have Icon's CDCV valves that allow for 10 levels of dampening, and I generally drive around day to day at a setting of 4, but I off-road at a higher setting, around 9 or 10, as to prevent bottoming out the suspension when going over bumps at speed or dropping off ledges while rock crawling. For those looking to beef up their FJ's front suspension and make their setup closer to that of a Baja trophy truck, there are options that allow for a second front shock to be installed through the use of a secondary shock mounting hoop and either special lower control arm add-ons or aftermarket LCAs altogether. Total Chaos, for example, offers LCAs that are standard length for traditional 3-inch lifts and that are longer for those with long travel suspension setups, but both have incorporated mounting spots for an additional shock. Total Chaos also offers dual shock hoops for both standard lift and long travel applications for those looking to add a secondary 2.5-inch diameter piggyback or bypass shock. These secondary shocks give the FJ even more dampening power and control, and allow for high-speed driving over uneven terrain, such as Baja-style desert driving. Icon Vehicle Dynamics also offers a dual shock setup that requires a lot less welding and fabrication than the Total Chaos kit, but also adds a secondary shock hoop while utilizing the factory lower control arms with a custom skid plate and an incorporated shock mount, which is pretty neat. Another thing you may notice when searching for FJ Cruiser suspension components is the difference between 2007 to 2009 FJ Cruiser lifts and 2010 and up FJ Cruiser lifts. This is due to the diameters of certain lift components, such as bushings, changing between 2009 and 2010's model years, at least when it comes to the front suspension. So while the rear suspension is pretty much interchangeable among the different years of FJ Cruisers, the front suspension is definitely specific for the earlier or later model years. Another thing to note is the difference between 4-wheel drive and 2-wheel drive FJ Cruisers. The 2-wheel drive FJ Cruiser will not have a front differential or CV axles and actually sits ever so slightly higher in the front than the 4x4 FJs. Without the front diff and CV axles to worry about, the front can be lifted a bit more than a 4x4 FJ without the fear of wearing out the CV joints. And though it isn't produced anymore, I remember once coming across an aftermarket machined front spindle specifically for 2-wheel drive FJs that helped with lifted applications. With the exception of that specific part, pretty much all lifts that work for 4x4 FJs will also work for 2-wheel drive FJs. Speaking of spindles, another thing to keep in mind is that with these upgraded suspension setups, there will be a lot more load and stress on factory components, such as the spindles. This is especially true if you have long travel or run heavier, larger tires. One product developed to strengthen this factory spindle is called a spindle gusset. They are essentially an additional metal backbone that you can weld onto your spindle to give it additional strength and keep it from bending out of shape should the FJ's suspension take a hard impact. I've seen this happen on the trail where someone bent their FJ's OEM spindle even on a normal 3-inch lift with 33s, so it is never a terrible idea to add these to your rig if you wheel your FJ hard. They do sell spindle gussets designed to work with FJs with or without a front sway bar, so just make sure you get the right ones for your application. And though they do require welding to install, there are companies such as FJ Toyman who already sell completed gusseted spindles ready for installation. After you replace your OEM ones, you send the factory ones back and get a core charge refund as long as they aren't damaged, which seems like a smart way to do it. You can also upgrade your FJ's lower control arm cam bolt tabs, which can bend out of place also as a result of a hard suspension hit. This is something that has happened to my own FJ, and even though I sort of bent them back and then had a shop weld behind them to help realign them, installing upgraded cam tabs from someone like Total Chaos would be the ideal solution. One thing that can be overlooked when it comes to suspension from time to time is how with a larger diameter coilover, such as a 2.5-inch diameter shock, the sway bar then has the possibility of contacting the coilover, unless sway bar relocation brackets are also installed. Most full kits include relocation brackets, which easily bolt on and push the sway bar just an inch or so forward, allowing plenty of clearance for the coilovers. But for those who purchase the coilovers by themselves, just make sure you don't forget those brackets. When I got my FJ, I had the 2.5-inch Icon coilovers already installed, but it didn't have the brackets, so the sway bar was only a few millimeters away from contacting them. So I found some for cheap online, and now it is one less thing to worry about. But of course, if you remove the front sway bar altogether, then that would also solve the problem. Some kits offered from companies will be in various stages, such as a Stage 1 kit that has the bare minimum parts for a full lift kit, while a Stage 6 or 7 kit will include a lot of additional suspension components, like shocks with external reservoirs, upper control arms, rear links, and a panhard bar. They are a great way to upgrade those additional components all at once, no doubt, but keep in mind that parts like the upper control arms, rear links, and panhard bar are offered from other companies and have different features that may be better for your specific build. For example, certain upper control arms may be equipped with uniballs, which are a bit more durable and allow for more articulation of the suspension without binding, but are exposed to the elements. But other upper control arms, like those offered from SPC Light Racing, have ball joints like the factory upper control arms, yet they are greasable for increased longevity and have built-in ways to adjust the camber and caster in order to get your alignment just right. Other parts, like rear links, may come with adjustability as to help perfect the vehicle's alignment and make sure that the wheel isn't rubbing in the rear wheel well. But these are notorious for having the threads rust out, even with proper maintenance, leading to rear link failure. It is for this reason that I went with ResFab non-adjustable rear links that are already the proper length for lifted applications, and I don't have to worry about maintenance or failure. The joints on aftermarket rear links also have some variation to them, some being equipped with Johnny joints that are durable and allow for more range of motion, like in rear long travel setups, but are known for wearing out and becoming a bit noisy, while others have standard rubber bushings, like from the factory, which are great for those who like low maintenance, but they will not allow for as much articulation. Do note that specific companies may offer items that are unique to them, and may be a great option, but will take some research to find out about. For example, Icon has Delta joints that are advertised as being extra durable, have tons of articulation, and aren't exposed to the elements like Uniballs are, but they come with a hefty price tag. JBA, or Jeep and by Al, has upper control arms with joints also advertised as allowing for extra articulation. Meanwhile, for the rear, ResFab offers links with Duroflex joints that are low maintenance like factory joints but allow for extra long travel articulation. There are other companies with unique types of options, so do some research and figure out what kind of components you like, from rubber bushings to poly bushings to Heim joints and more. Another sweet upgrade some folks look into is an aftermarket rear axle. The early 2007 year FJ Cruisers are notorious for having weak rear differential gears, prone to shearing off teeth while off-roading. So while some may simply upgrade their gears in the factory 8-inch rear differential, another option is to simply replace the whole solid rear axle. Some companies do offer upgraded rear axles that are, in theory, ready to be bolted onto the FJ after the factory one is removed. But some sell axles that with some clever fabrication work can be made to work with the FJ suspension mounting points. It is not uncommon, however, for folks who are upgrading the rear axle to change the factory rear link and shock mounts through unique fabrication in order to build a custom rear suspension setup that may even offer more travel than the previously mentioned rear long travel kits. And finally, I wanted to mention sway bar quick disconnects on FJ Cruisers. Other vehicle manufacturers, such as Jeep, are set up in such a way that adding quick disconnecting sway bars is much easier. A quick disconnecting sway bar allows for the driver to quickly increase the vehicle's off-road suspension travel, yet keep the vehicle behaving as the manufacturer intended on the road. Jeep has even incorporated electronic disconnecting sway bars on newer vehicles, so the driver can do this with the press of a button, and doesn't even have to hop out to pull out pins or unbolt sway bar links to make this happen. Toyota has incorporated into their newer vehicles a similar system with KDSS, or the Kinetic Dynamic Suspension System, which uses a hydraulic ram attached to the sway bar to help control the suspension on-road, but also allow for more travel off-road. With FJ Cruiser suspension, however, there are no widely used quick disconnecting sway bars, as the design of the FJ sway bar makes this difficult to do in a dependable way. Some have made custom quick disconnecting sway bar links that give the FJ the proper on-road driving manners while allowing better travel of the IFS after removing a pin or some bolts. But few are strong enough or designed well enough to last, leading to many owners simply removing the sway bars altogether. Front quick disconnect sway bar links are much more common than rear ones, but both are possible, just not dependable or used as widely as in the Jeep community. And that, everyone, is my 2 cents on FJ Cruiser suspension and lifts. Hopefully this video specifically, and this video series in general, has been helpful to you in clarifying the differences and details of some lift kits and options out there, or, at a minimum, is able to steer you in the right direction for your own future research. To read more details and see what is on the market, check out the link in the description for my complete FJ Cruiser lift comparison guide on the FJ Cruiser forums. It will have more specific details about each company and what types of lift components they offer. And if these videos have been helpful to you, be sure to share them with others you know who may have FJs and are in need of answers to their suspension-related questions. Also, go ahead and comment below what your lift setup is if you have a lifted FJ already, or what future lift you plan on installing. I'm so glad I could make these videos for you all, and I've been delighted by the positive response you've all given me. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to check out other FJ videos on my channel. And until next time, take care.